بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين رحمة للعالمين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك يا ابن رسول الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لك الفداء يا غريب يا مظلوم يا شهيد بأرض كربلاء ثم السلام عليكم يا أهل الأرزاق الحسين المظلوم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتاب الحكيم وهو أصدق الصادقين لقد كان في قصص عبرة لأولي الألباب ما كان حديثا يفترى ولكن تصديق الذي بين يديه وتفصيل كل شيء وهدى ورحمة لقوم يؤمنون. صلوات الله. The narrative that we are working with during these days, and each one has a specific meaning for people who approach it from their angle. In other words, there is already a pre-understanding in the minds of the people when they hear the narrative. It's not that it comes in the vacuum of neutrality. You already have some ideas about Islam, about Islamic history, about the history of the rulers in the Muslim world from the beginning. All of this knowledge that we have about the times, about the conditions in which we live, they interfere with the way a narrative is going to work on us. You and I believe that the event of Karbala is extremely important for us to understand, because it also gives us the information that we need for our future purposes. Morality demands from us that we should be able to decide on the solution whenever the conflict presents us. That's why we search for the principles, we search for the values, so that those values become available to us. And my argument has been that those values are the foundation of the narrative of Karbala. There are so many things that Karbala allows us to think about independently. In fact, I regard one of the most enigmatic quality of the Karbala narrative is that it is open to different interpretations. It's so rich, spiritually, morally, historically. You look at the events that are unfolding, and you wonder, how can we easily understand Karbala so superficially to draw our conclusions. Because I'm worried about our inability to enter the mind of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Please listen carefully, because I'm trying to do something that you and I would regard in history and historical studies as impossible. Because the event has happened so many years ago, 1300 years have passed, to try to imagine what is going on in the mind of Imam Hussain alayhi salam would require a lot of speculation. And speculation is not very helpful when you want to draw large moral conclusions. Imagine this story that is in the sources, and I want you to understand this. That when Hur stood there in the morning and looked around himself, the ocean of soldiers. The same scene was seen by Imam Hussain alayhi salam also, because they both stood from the vantage point. There was this small rising near the tents of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the small hill. And when he went there up, he could see the ocean of soldiers. Now, to understand what's going on in the minds of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, we need to assess the animosity of the soldiers. Why are they there? Why have they come there? If not to fight the grandson of the Prophet. That's what is the key element here. They wouldn't have gone after Hussain alayhi salam if Hussain was an ordinary human being who refused to pay allegiance to Yazid. Yazid insisted that I want these three, four individuals to pay allegiance to me. Of all of them, Hussain ibn Ali is the most important. There was something about Imam Hussain alayhi salam that Yazid thought that if Hussain could be pressurized to pay allegiance to the ruler of Damascus, then the task will be easier to deal with, because the pious opposition will be quieted. There was a pious opposition. When people in Makkah and Medina heard that Yazid is going to be the next caliph, 15th of Rajab, Muawiyah had died. By the first week, 2 weeks, the news comes and everybody is working hard to make sure that the next caliph is accepted. Muawiyah had already indicated that he wants his son Yazid to become the next caliph. And he had already prepared a number of the very prominent Meccan citizens. I use the word citizens here. They are the Sahaba, so to speak, who will accept Yazid as Amir al-Mu'mineen. It's a big title. Amir al-Mu'mineen means you're going to be the commander of the faithful. That means you will lead them in the prayers and you will lead them in the army. I mentioned yesterday the dual role of the Prophet ﷺ, that he was both moral leader and the political leader. He combined in himself the civic and the moral authority. Civic authority is easy to disobey. I will be very honest about that. That has been shown quite a few times in history that some of the leaders of the civic authority were disobeyed by the citizens. They didn't care for them. But when it comes to disobeying moral authority, then the question arises about the character of the ruler. What kind of character has he? What kind of doubt has he created in the minds of the people who are not willing to pay allegiance to him, who are not willing, to obey him in certain moral issues? Look at this story that I'm going to present to you. That Hur is standing early in the morning, looking around himself, and he finds his own companion, Qurra ibn Qais. He is one of his helpers, so to speak. He's the commander. And Qurra is, taking care of the commander, meeting his needs, taking care of his food, everything else. Qurra is standing there. And I want you to understand that many times when you want to make a decision, you don't want anybody around you. Difficult decisions are not made easily when people are around you. You want to be left alone. Hur is combating his mind. His mind is torn between the two things. Up to the 9th of Muharram, Imam Hussein is trying to establish peace. And I'm giving you the sources in the history that Imam Hussein alayhi salam did not want to begin hostilities. He was committed to peace. In his conversations with Ibn Sa'ad, Umar ibn Sa'ad, he made it very clear that, look, I have not come here. I'm not asking for caliphate. I don't want to become the Khalifa or anything. I want to live in peace. And I want to go back to Medina, because that's where I was born and that's where I want to spend my last days. All these conversations are going on, and we find the letter was written to Ibn Ziyad on the 9th of Muharram, and he is congratulating the governor, so to speak, Ibn Ziyad. That, look, I found a solution. Hussein is not willing to fight, and he does not want to claim the caliphate or anything. He wants to go back to Medina, and we should let him go. Hur is a witness to all these conversations that are going on. And I want you to understand that each part of the narrative has a moral implication. If Imam Hussein doesn't listen, insists upon becoming the Khalifa, then he has to fight. And in the fight, he's going to sacrifice so many Muslims. He doesn't want that to happen. It had already happened in Siffin, the battles of Imam Ali. Already happened other battles. He didn't want to see more destruction of life. This is by the way it comes out. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is worried on two levels. If he doesn't fight, then is he humiliated in front of the authorities, who should be actually fought because they are immoral authority. To take a stance against the immoral authority is wajib. If somebody is not behaving well and wants to dominate you, then you have a right to, to stand firm against that domination. Don't ever accept, don't ever give in to the authoritarian politics. Imam Hussein is fully aware of it. And if this could happen, the second choice was, Imam Hussein's family was already there. You're with your family, your children, your sisters, your wife, everybody is with you. You have a greater responsibility. You're not alone. Hur is alone, by the way. We are later on told that his wife was already in Karbala. Later on, we are told about that. But that also is doubtful. We don't know for sure that his family was there, but Imam Hussein's family was already there. Any step that Imam Hussein would take, the family was at risk. It was not easy. You have young people in the family. You have Ona Muhammad, the children of Bibi Zainab, Qasim, Ali Akbar, Abbas, four brothers, the three brothers of Abbas. All of them are there. If the battle was going to start, then all of their lives would be in danger. Imam Hussain is fully aware of the moral responsibility he has for the sacredness of the life. Life is sacred for Imam Hussain alayhi salam. You cannot destroy life. When the animals were important for Imam Hussain loved the animals that were with him. They were camels. If you go to Karbala in the Khaymaga, by the way, you see the places made for the camels, where they were, stationed in the tent itself. Who is standing and is aware of everything, and Qurrat ibn Qais is a problem for him. He wants to make a decision, but he doesn't want anybody to know, because his life would be in danger. Qurrat, why don't you go? Have you given water to your horse today? That's how the conversation begins. Asaqaita khairan, have you given water? Qurrat knows that he's trying to get rid of me. Somehow you know it because your master, he's your master, he said, why don't you go and give water to your horse? I can do it later on. I want to be with you. No, you go give the water to the animal has a right to drink. Go, take him. This is the conversation Hur is having with his own companion. The companion reports later on, Tabari tells us, that Qurra later on said that I didn't know what he was going to do. The only thing I knew was that he wanted me to be away from him. Then I saw him going towards the army of Imam Hussain, towards the tents of Imam Hussain. And he was going slowly. If they had caught him, they would have killed him. He was a commander. And if they would have found out that he was going to join Imam Hussain, they would not have tolerated, they would immediately have executed him. Hur is slowly moving. Two other commanders are saying, Hur, what's happening to you? We see your face so dull. What is happening to you? Are you going to attack? This is not the time to attack. Wait for all of us. You see the rider is slowly moving with his horse. And then he hits the horse to move in a trot. Go! And he goes and comes to the tent of Imam. And I have already mentioned that before, my first or second lecture. But I want you to understand the delicate nature of moral negotiation. Moral negotiations are not easily made. Modern philosophy has not paid attention to the emotional side of decision making. Most of the time, emotions are downplayed. In secular culture, you can't talk about emotions because that would be irrational. Whereas emotions are very important for you to make a decision. Many times, your heart is talking to you more than your head is talking to you. And the heart is telling you, you have to make the sacrifice. Whereas the head tells you, no, your own preservation is more important than making the sacrifice. How many times we have all faced that situation? Now I want you to change your direction. Come now to talk to Bibi Zainab. This is 9th of Muharram. The days are passing and tomorrow is Ashura. The 9th of Muharram, Bibi Zainab is extremely uneasy. She can't sit anyplace. She's moving. She comes to Imam Hussain, she comes to the children, to the women, She talks to our President Abbas, and she is worried what is going to happen tomorrow. Night of Muharram in the evening, she asked Imam, said, what is happening tomorrow? Has the problem been resolved between you and them? Imam Hussein says, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That will happen which God has determined. You are bringing a religious element into moral decision making. You will see how Bibi Zainab stands firm to what Imam Hussein says. The will of God will be done. And Bibi Zainab is, worried about. He said, did you notice, Hussein, that the army of the enemy is moving closer to us? It's moving closer and closer to us. And my heart is just throbbing. I don't know what to do. I can't sit quietly. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is saying, Zainab, first of all, be patient. The brother and sister are showing what we call the different dimension of the family interaction. By the way, all these things are mentioned in the book, and they are not made up by me. People sometimes ask me, where was this? Who recorded all these things? In many instances, I find that the reporter is Imam Zainul Abidin. He's the one who's there, with aunt, with father, with everybody else. And he's also ill. So he's more in the, whatever is happening in the tent, he's aware of it, unless his fever was sometimes very high. And Kulsum and other women were, trying to take care of him. I want to move ahead and take you to the different level of a conversation. What Karbala has done is that the paradigm has remained enigmatic, open to interpretation. And not only that, you cannot say this is the final interpretation and this is the only one that will be accepted. Because Karbala says, no, I'm an open book. You can read me and interpret me the way you see me. Within certain limits, you and I are being invited to say clearly, do you know about Karbala or are you in Karbala? My question is not rhetoric. Do you know about Karbala? That means you are someone who came later on, heard about it. You are a student of Islamic history. You are the student of history, or whatever you are curious and you heard about it. You know about it. You know of it. For you and me, by the way, the Karbala is not you know about, but it is you know it intimately. For us, it is an intimate part of our own personality. We've been hearing about Karbala for ages now. Year after year, we have heard about it. And therefore, it becomes extremely important for us to realize one thing. How is the memory going to take us where? Memory can be erased. And that's the danger with any narrative. Any story can be erased. Or the narrative, when it is remembered and recited time and again, it might add things that were not there. The narrative is not always preserved in the very short form. That's why for the day of Ashura, there are so many riwayat that our scholars used to come together and say, look, you cannot accept all the riwayat and be careful. When you talk about Imam Hussein, you must know that you're talking about the man who understood and who was, a perfect individual and the grandson of the prophet who was given every instance of learning from his father, from his grandfather, and he is the one representing them in all entirety. He's not like others. He's been brought up by Fatima al-Zahra. He is the brother of Hassan. He is in all of these layers of horizontal relationship. Imam Hussein is scoring A. Therefore, what he says carries the day. If you try to erase the truth from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, then the story becomes weak. I'm on a very sensitive issue. If you do not mention the truth about Imam Hussein's events, then you are going to hurt yourself and Imam Hussein's story. Because truth is what you and I search for. Our historical research is based on finding the truth of the situation. When did this happen? How did this happen? It's still a mystery for us. Wouldn't you say that? We don't know everything. Historians are not giving us the full picture because they are worried about implications of providing alternative narrative. An event is usually real, and that guarantees its life. If the story is not real, it will not continue for many generations. It will die. And one thing about Karbala we know is that its skeletal, its bare, framework was preserved from the very beginning. Bibi Zainab was there from the very beginning. I think Bibi Zainab has played such a role that without Bibi Zainab, Salamun Alayha, we don't have Karbala in front of us. That lady not only preserved, but also related it time and again, time and again. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that the story of Karbala is obtainable. If you open the books today, you'll find it everywhere. Even Gibbons, in his History of the World, had a section on Hussein ibn Ali. So everybody knew that this had happened in the history, and this is what they did to the grandson of their own prophet. That was the thing, that was the main issue there. Who was Hussein? Once that question was explored, people like historians like Wellhausen, Golzia, they are Jewish historians. When they opened the books of Muslims, they found the story being told. And they tried to, move it towards politics, that this was politics, it had nothing to do with Islam, it had nothing to do with the Quran. And the more you look at what Bibi Zainab is doing is that it is coming directly from the Quran. It is coming directly from that view that the Quran is demanding justice and truth. And the moment you sacrifice those, the history is erased. The challenge then has been for the Quran to remind us of something very important. What the Quran has done is that it has created a syllabus for us. Each course you take in the university, in the school, has a syllabus, has a plan. You open the plan, this is what is to be discussed, this is how it is to be done. The Quran also sets a syllabus for us. It's amazing syllabus, by the way. It is very critical of those who are not going to use their mind properly. The Quran is very adamant. So you and I are being challenged to use our minds. لهم قلوب لا يفقهون بها ولهم أعين لا يبصرون بها ولهم آذان لا يسمعون بها أولئك كالأنعام بل هم أضل أولئك هم الغافلون. Who are the people who are neglectful? These are the ones who are not using their minds. They have eyes, but they don't see it. That means they don't have the inner dimension of the eyes. They are not able to see. They have ears, but they don't hear the truth. They hear what they want to hear. Haven't you heard about that? That people don't hear sometimes what they don't want to hear. And not only that, they have hearts, they have minds, and they don't want to hear about what they need to hear about the working of the mind. What it means is the Quran is providing a syllabus saying that you will not be able to afford by impairing your ability to understand, because it would impair your consequences. If you don't understand, if you go to work in an office and they give you a plan that this is your job description, if you don't follow it within no time, in 90 days of your probation, they kick you out. They no, you are not following it. Therefore, will not. The Quran does the same thing, that we will not tolerate something from the human beings. Now, I'm being very clear here. The Quran says we will not tolerate from them, because لَقَدْ زَرَعْنَا لِجَهَنَّمَ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْجِنِّ وَالْإِنسِ. We have prepared many human beings and jinn for the burning fire. Who are these people who will burn in the fire? These are the ones who are not using their minds. See the way the threat is? The language of threat that the Quran uses is for those who don't want to think, for those who don't want to, appreciate what God has given them. They have eyes, they don't have the depth. They have ears, they don't hear the wise. They don't hear the things that come to a mind that are part of the inspiration that God has given them. Ultimately, is going to have consequences. The community that does not want to think will be dominated by others all the time, because they have not been independent in their thinking. They need to be independent in their thinking. This is what we call a jihad bil aql. Your striving, your struggle with your reasoning power is to be forceful in the society. Now, if you close the history, if you say, no, we don't want to remember, we don't have to remember Karbala, there is no need to do that, then you will have lost an opportunity to learn. And that opportunity is the culture in which values are determined by those who are in power. We are told the religion is this, because those in power are the ones who are defining religion for us. Universities do, modernity does. And they are describing that, very different style of, reasoning, that no, we will tell you what you need to believe in. In religious studies, there are so many authorities that spoke about it, that the moment you allow others to represent you, they will do a lot of injustice to you. Because you need to stand firm in what you believe and how you believe. I want to move on by saying that one of the challenges is for us to decode a narrative. How do we open it? How is it possible to understand Qurrat ibn Qais? I think that his moral decision not to follow Hur, when Hur was already going, was a weakness. I don't know what you think. It was a weakness. Seeing Hur, what was he doing, where he was going towards the tents of Imam Hussein. That means he knew that he was going to connect himself with them. And he said, if only he told me, I would have gone with him. That's an excuse. I would have gone, no, you could have gone by the strength of your own decision making. And therefore, Hur is not to be blamed here that he didn't tell me where he was going. You saw him where he was going. The decoding of Hur's position is enabling me to come to one of the most important personalities of Karbala. Salawat wa alhamdulillah. I mentioned yesterday that Qasim ibn al-Hassan was the first person to go. But all the historical sources are telling us, that the first person in the family to go to fight the enemy was Ali Akbar. We also are told in the narratives of Karbala that he was 19 or 25, depending who is writing about him. Now, Ali Akbar is a very special case, that he is going to make those decisions which are going to affect all of us. But before that, we need to understand his position with his family. We want to know how is he with his mother. What is his mother thinking about in Karbala? Layla is a Thaqafi. She belongs to the Umayyads. She has family, in Banu Umayyah. Or Layla is married to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and very faithful to Imam Hussein. Because here we are talking about the tribalism that appears in Karbala as it appeared in all other battles and wars. The tribalism was, there was an Hashemite claim of Ali Akbar's position, which Muawiyah tried to influence. Muawiyah one day in his court asked people, who is the most likely successor to Hussein ibn Ali? His courtiers mentioned Ali. So there are three Alis. There's Ali Akbar, there's Ali Asghar, Ali Awsat. Who are you talking about? It's Ali Akbar. He is the elder son of Imam Ali, Imam Hussein. Actually, Imam Zalabidin is the elder son. And they said this. Muawiyah is being told in his court that this boy, this young man, could be the one to build the bridges between you and the Hashemites. We need to patronize him. We need to bribe him to come over to us. It's true. Muawiyah ordered, the poems to be recited in the honor of Ali Akbar. So there were those poets, describing him and making good mention of Ali Akbar. Imagine somebody, with a weak personality. If he had been, bribed and he had been taken off, in the list of Banu Hashim, he could have gone on the side of Muawiyah. There were people who did that, by the way, in the history. We don't like to talk about it, but Ibn Abbas also, left Imam Ali and went, to Muawiyah. Now, for whatever reason he did, but it is still a question mark. Why did he do that? You just can't leave one, your own father and join someone else because it is to your advantage. Ali Akbar understood this quite well. And all that they tried to lure him to go, in the Umayyad camp. And they even promised him that you will be the next Khalifa. Can you imagine, young men? At that point, I think the age 25 seems to be quite possible. And 19 seems to be too young, So at that point, he's being asked to join. In other words, Ali Akbar could have easily said, okay, I'll go and I will. So, that will also give me an opportunity to save my father. If I become the leader, if I become the political leader, I can also save my family members. But Layla was not going to take it. She said to Ali Akbar, no. She said, no, all this is, it's not that he made a decision to go, but he said, they're reading poems about me. And they are praising me, and they are saying that I am the one who can build the bridges between Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim. And everybody else, is wondering about it. Imam Hussain knew about it. But Ali Akbar was firmly standing with his father. And Layla was there to support him. So although she was this is, by the way, we will hear about Abul Fazl Abbas also. Because Abul Fazl Abbas was related to Shimr. He was al-Banin's distant cousin. And he came, he wanted to take away Abul Fazl Abbas and his brothers and give them security and give them amnesty and take them away from Imam Hussain. Abbas was not going to do that. Never. Therefore, we call Abbas the most faithful. He could have gone, he would have taken his three brothers, Osman, Jafar, and Muhammad, all of them would have gone with him. But no. Both Ali Akbar and Abul Fazl Abbas were in a very delicate situation. I don't see them hesitating at all to be in Karbala or hesitating at all to be, the supporters of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. But it is very clear that Ali Akbar was not going to leave Imam Hussain under any circumstance. The most important aspect of Ali Akbar's life is that Ali Akbar was exactly the copy of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the strongest personality that we have seen in that age group. And it's very interesting to see that on Ashura night, on the 10th night, Abbas and Akbar are together. Even when Imam Hussain is asking to go and carry, the shuhada from the battlefield, Abbas and Akbar are with Imam Hussain all the time. But the time came for him to tell his father that I need to go and fight. And he, Imam Hussain is looking at his son, and I'm saying it's not looking at his son, but looking at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because that was his ziyaratgah. That's where he saw the Prophet. When he says himself, whenever I needed to see my grandfather, I looked at my son, Ya Allah. The Prophet was visible. And that's how Imam Hussain saw Ali Akbar. Ali Akbar was not only the Shabi of the Prophet, but he was the eldest son of Imam Hussain. If Ali ibn Hussain was there, then this was the second Ali that we see. The third Ali is Ali Asghar, by the way. We know it. History is drawing a very interesting. This is, by the way, reported by Tabari and all the historians, that Ali Akbar came out. And then he is reading Tarjis, that means he reads Rajas. All the soldiers came and they introduced themselves. Look at what he says. Ana Ali ibn al-Hussein ibn Ali. Nahnu wa baytullah awla binna. He's introducing himself. I am the son of Ali. I am the son of Hussein. And Hussein, the son of Ali. And that's how they saw themselves. Ali Akbar goes out and comes out in the battlefield. There was something peculiar about when he left the tent. There was no time that Imam Hussein took Allah as a witness that, Ya Allah, my nephew is going. Ya Allah, my brother is going. But Imam Hussein immediately raised his hands and said, Ya Allah, now has come in the battlefield the one who is exactly like the Prophet. The one who speaks like Prophet, who walks like a Prophet. And whenever we needed to see him, to see the Prophet, we looked at him. This is Ali Akbar, by the way. And Ali Akbar is going to the field. And Imam Hussein, whenever he took somebody, whenever he made somebody sit on the horse, Qasim sat on the horse and he let Qasim go. Or Muhammad sat on the horse, he let them go. But Imam Hussein is going now, and Ali Akbar is going, and Imam Hussein is running behind him. He's running behind him. He doesn't want him to go. The son, he doesn't want him to leave. Can you imagine what is happening to the heart of the father? This is Imam Hussein alayhi Islam as a father here. And he goes after him. Ali Akbar looks behind and says, Baba, I can't go. If you're going to run behind me, I can't go, I can go. I'm not at peace at all. He comes down and meets Imam Hussein, and again Imam Hussein bids him farewell and he goes. When he goes in the battlefield, he's standing near the tent. Whose tent is he standing near? He's standing near the tent of Layla. Layla is looking at the face of Imam Hussein to find out how is her son doing in the battlefield. My brothers and sisters, this is a very delicate moment for Layla. She has to find out, but she can't go out. She's standing there looking at the face of Imam Hussein. All of a sudden, Imam Hussein's face becomes dark. Mawla, what's happening? Mawla, what's happening? Said, your son is fighting a very, very strong one of the enemies who is determined to, destroy him. Layla, go in and pray to Allah, because I have heard the Prophet say that mother's prayer for the son is accepted by God. Go and pray. And Layla goes, I don't know. I have no, report telling me what happened, but she must have gone in the khayma and opened her hands and asked Allah, Ya Allah, my son is there. And Ali Akbar goes. Immediately, he succeeded in throwing the enemy, and he comes back. And now his tongue is out. Baba alatash. Baba alatash qatalani. This thirst is killing me. And Ali Akbar, is asking for water. In my mind, there came a point, doesn't he know that there is no water? And yet he is saying, Baba, give me water. Give me some water. And I think there was this hujjah was going to remain that, Ya Allah, bear witness that my son is thirsty and I don't have water even to give him. Not only that, but there's no water at all. And ultimately, Imam Hussein says, why don't you put your tongue in my mouth? And maybe you will be more, at peace. And Ali Akbar puts his tongue in his father's mouth, and he checks it out saying, Baba, your tongue is even more drier than my tongue. This was the situation in Karbala, brothers and sisters, that not having water was one of the greatest sins of the Banu Umayyah, not giving the water. And that's what they did. Ali Akbar had to go back to the battleground, and he was fighting there until he was hurt. And when he fell down off the horse, he called his father by saying, Alaykunna minni salam, ya Abata. He didn't ask him to come and help. Didn't say, Adrikni ya Abata. Come and help. He said, no, my final greetings to you. Did Ali Akbar know what was Imam Zain going through? I'm sure he did. He didn't want Imam Zain to come like that, when he was lying down on the ground with a spear in his chest, and Imam Zain comes closer to him and finds Ali Akbar is in the last moments of his life. And Imam Zain alayhi salam takes him in his own, lap and says, Ali, it is the time that I could not help you. I could not give you a drop of water, Ali. And Ali Akbar is saying, and look at this, Ali Akbar is saying, Baba, I can see my grandfather standing with water and giving me water, Baba. Don't worry about me, my grandfather is with me. That station, spiritual station, is not fathomable by you and me in the modern times. But this is something that has been reported by the sources, how Ali Akbar was going to talk to his father, say, Baba, I'm being fed, I'm being given water by the grandfather. And at that time, Ali Akbar passes away, and Imam Hussain is telling all the young boys, you who are standing near the khayma, come and take your brother in the tent. Allah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Ya Allah, Ya Allah. بحق الحسين وأولاد الحسين وأصحاب الحسين. يا الله أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. All together, brothers and sisters. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعا ويكشف السوء. Ya Allah, Ya Allah. For the sake of Imam Hussain and his children and his companions, Ya Allah, listen to our petition, Ya Allah. We are asking your help in all that is happening in our lives. Ya Allah, we are asking you to cure those who are suffering from illnesses and who are sick in the hospital or anywhere. Ya Allah, we are saying about all the sick people. Ya Allah, we are asking your help to improve our situation in this world. Ya Allah, forgive us and give us the ability to realize the message of Imam Hussain the way it is unfolding now in front of our eyes. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen.